All right, welcome in, everyone. Ready for another deep dive.
Ready when you are.
Today, we're tackling something that I think a lot of people out there, have some experience with. Long-distance relationships.
Yeah,
It could be across town, it could be across countries, it could even just be like across time zones because your schedules are so different. But loving from afar is pretty common, right?
It really is.
Yeah. And so in this deep dive, we really wanted to get into, like, why is it so hard?
Right.
And what can we do to not just survive it, but actually, like, make it work, make it thrive?
Absolutely.
So we've gone out and we've gathered some really emotionally engaging content. A lot of it focuses on, the challenges, but also some really helpful tips.
Yeah.
We're going to be exploring those inherent hurdles, like what makes this so hard? What are the big things that get in the way? And then, like, what are some real strategies that you can use to bridge that distance?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's amazing, how many people are in long-distance relationships these days.
Mm-hmm.
It really speaks to our human desire for connection, even when we're physically apart. And, as you said, it's not just the physical distance, it's the way that affects, the emotional and practical aspects of a relationship as well.
Yeah.
And so we're hoping to kind of illuminate those challenges and provide some, really useful takeaways for people.
Okay, let's unpack that then. Why is long distance so hard?
Yep.
I mean, it seems obvious, right? It's like you miss out on all that day-to-day stuff, that hug after a tough day, or those random late-night talks, just being able to, like, be in the same room with someone. And our sources really hit on that, like, that physical presence is such a big deal.
Absolutely. And it's, it's more than just missing out on those comforting moments.
Yeah.
It's the fact that can lead to a lot of, really tangible challenges.
Yeah.
Like, think about time zone differences or just the constant awareness that you're physically separated, which, understandably can lead to some feelings of insecurity or loneliness.
Yeah.
It's really a combination of all those things.
And it's so important to know, like, if you're in one of these relationships and you're feeling frustrated or you're starting to, like, question things, that's normal.
Totally normal.
Our sources really drive that home. Like, don't freak out. It doesn't mean that it's doomed.
Exactly. It's not about whether those feelings come up, because they probably will.
Yeah.
It's more about, like, how do you and your partner address those feelings together?
Yeah.
That shared effort is really powerful.
It's kind of like, it's like a maintenance thing, right?
Yeah.
It shows that you're invested.
Absolutely.
All right, let's dig into some of these specific challenges. One that came up over and over again is the lack of physical touch.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, right? Because
Yeah.
for a lot of people, that's like a love language.
It is.
That's how they experience love and how they show it.
That's right.
So when you don't have those hugs or that holding hands, even just like sitting next to someone, it creates this disconnect.
Absolutely. And it can feel almost like you're missing a language in your relationship.
Wow.
And, it can really tap into some of those deeper needs around, like, attachment and security.
Right.
Which are so essential in relationships.
Then you've got communication gaps, which, oh my gosh, if you've ever been there, it's so frustrating.
It is.
Like the video call drops because the Wi-Fi is bad, or you misinterpret a text because you can't hear someone's tone.
And what's so interesting there is the role of technology.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, it's supposed to bridge the gap.
Right.
But then it also becomes its own source of frustration.
Because it's not perfect.
Because it's not perfect.
And you're so reliant on it.
Exactly. And, we're relying on digital communication, which means we're vulnerable to all those technical glitches.
Mm-hmm.
And, text can only convey so much.
Right.
And it's really hard to get across those nuances of emotion and intention. And that can quickly lead to misunderstandings and just that feeling of, like, not really being heard or understood.
Yeah. For sure. And then without that daily interaction, it can be really easy for trust issues to start popping up. It's like, because you're not seeing what's happening, it's really easy to let your mind go to some, not so great places.
Absolutely. And, thinking about it from a human needs perspective, we all need to feel secure in our relationships.
Right.
And part of that comes from, shared experiences and being able to see what your partner is doing and who they're with and what their day looks like.
Yeah.
And when that's missing, it's really easy for our minds to fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
Often with the worst case scenarios.
Oh, for sure.
Which then can lead to jealousy or suspicion.
Yeah.
And so it really underscores the importance of vulnerability and open communication.
Yeah, like just talking about it.
Exactly.
Okay, so another very practical obstacle that comes with long distance is just different schedules.
Oh, yeah.
When you're starting your day and they're ending theirs, or vice versa, it can be so hard to find time to connect.
Yeah, it's like a constant puzzle.
It is.
It's like, okay, when are we both free and awake and, not exhausted?
Not already doing something else, yeah.
Exactly. And it can be exhausting.
Yeah.
For both people. It requires a lot of intentionality, a lot of flexibility.
And spontaneity kind of goes out the window.
Right. Even a simple phone call needs to be scheduled sometimes.
Yeah.
And so you can start to feel like you're living separate lives, even though you're in a relationship.
Right. Okay. And then the last big challenge that we saw was like the unclear future thing.
Yeah.
If you're just always in this long distance mode and there's not a sense of like, okay, what's next? It can feel endless.
Yeah.
Like, when does this end?
Totally. And one of the sources actually used the term emotional fatigue.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Like, you just get tired.
Yeah.
And, it's because without those conversations about, okay, when might we close the distance? What are the steps we can take to get there?
Yeah.
It's very easy to just focus on the current challenges.
Yeah.
And those can feel really overwhelming and even insurmountable.
Okay, before we move on, I'm curious, like, have any of these things resonated with you?
Yeah, for sure.
Have you bumped up against some of these things?
Definitely, especially the time zone differences.
Yeah.
And I think that feeds into the communication gaps too.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Because when you're constantly trying to catch each other at a good time, it's really easy for things to fall through the cracks.
Right, and then you feel disconnected.
Exactly.
Okay, so now let's shift gears.
Okay.
What can we actually do to make this work?
Right.
Our sources have a ton of practical advice. The first one is prioritize communication. But, and this is huge, you don't have to be talking all the time.
Yeah, that's so important. Because it's great to, talk regularly and stay in touch. But feeling like you have to be available 24/7, that's a recipe for burnout.
Yeah, and it starts to feel like an obligation.
It does. It doesn't feel genuine.
Right, exactly.
Like you're not really connecting. You're just doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, so it's more about being intentional.
Absolutely.
Setting aside time for focused conversations.
Yes.
It could be 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever works.
Yeah.
But make it quality time.
Exactly. And knowing that you have that dedicated time to connect can actually take the pressure off,
Oh, yeah.
to be constantly texting or, on social media all day.
Right, like checking in. Yeah, totally. Okay, the next tip is to create shared goals.
Yeah.
And this is where you really get into that, like talking about the future stuff.
Absolutely. This is how you combat that feeling of like an endless distance.
Right.
By talking about and planning for, when are you going to see each other next?
Yeah.
What are the steps you can take to eventually live in the same place?
Right. You're creating something to look forward to.
Exactly. And it gives you a sense of, like, we're in this together.
Yeah, we're a team.
We're a team. We're working towards this.
Our sources gave some really simple examples, like just planning the next visit.
Yeah.
It sounds obvious, but just having that date on the calendar can be so helpful.
It can.
And then those bigger picture conversations, like how do we close the gap eventually, that can give you so much hope.
It's that power of anticipation, right? Instead of just focusing on how hard it is right now, you're looking forward to what's to come.
Yeah, totally. I love this next tip. Send surprises.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about those little things that say, hey, I'm thinking of you, even though I'm not there.
And it doesn't have to be anything big or expensive.
Right.
It could be a handwritten letter, a playlist of songs that remind you of them, a small gift that, they've been wanting.
Yeah.
Or even just a voice note saying, hey, I love you, I miss you.
Yeah.
Those little things can go a long way.
Yeah. Because it makes you feel thought of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how those small gestures can carry so much weight when you're not physically together.
Yeah.
They become these, like, tangible expressions of your love.
Okay, so we've talked about communication. We've talked about surprises. Another tip is to schedule virtual dates.
Yes.
It's all about making time to do things together, even if you're apart.
Exactly. And don't just settle for those quick video calls.
Yeah.
Like, actually plan something.
Right.
Our sources suggested, like, watching a movie together.
Oh, yeah.
Playing online games together. Even cooking the same meal at the same time.
And then, like, eating together.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're having dinner together, even though you're miles apart.
Yeah, it's so fun. And it creates these memories, right?
Absolutely. And it gives you a sense of, like, normalcy and togetherness.
Yeah, that you're still doing life together.
Exactly. So it's really about finding those creative ways to, stay connected.
Yeah, right. Okay, next up, building trust through openness.
Yeah.
This is so important, like being able to be honest with each other.
Absolutely. And, transparency is important in any relationship, but it's especially crucial in long distance.
Yeah.
Being open about your feelings, even the tough ones like sadness, insecurity.
Yeah.
It creates a safe space for your partner to do the same.
And that's how you build trust.
Exactly. And, our sources really emphasize that trust isn't about pretending to be perfect. It's about being real.
Yeah, letting the other person see you, even the messy parts.
Exactly. And being willing to be vulnerable, that creates real intimacy.
Okay, last tip. And this one might seem counterintuitive, but support each other's independence.
Yeah.
You are still individuals, even though you're in a relationship.
That's right. And that's actually really healthy for the relationship in the long run.
Yeah.
Support your partner's goals, their social life, their self-care.
Yeah.
Long distance doesn't mean putting your life on hold. And in fact, respecting each other's independence can actually make your bond stronger.
Because you're not, suffocating each other.
Exactly. And you're both able to grow as individuals.
Right.
Which ultimately makes the relationship richer.
Totally. Okay, so one of our sources actually tells this really great story about a couple named Sam and Lena, and they were long distance across different countries and cultures for 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and they only saw each other about twice a year.
That's tough.
So tough. But they did some really interesting things to stay connected. They had this non-negotiable Sunday video date every week.
Okay.
And they also had this shared Google Doc where they would write down questions for each other throughout the week.
Oh, I like that.
Isn't that cool? So they always had something to talk about.
Yeah, that's really smart.
And then, get this, they would watch TV shows simultaneously, and they'd text each other their reactions.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah, so it was like they were watching together.
Yeah.
And guess what? They eventually got married.
Wow. Wow, that's great.
Yeah, and they live together now.
That's so inspiring.
Yeah, it really shows you that, the connection can outweigh the distance.
It really does.
Yeah.
And, it's a reminder that, the effort you put in matters.
Yes.
It's not about the miles. It's about the connection.
Right. And speaking of effort, our source actually gives some really great questions that you can ask your partner to help you connect.
Oh, okay.
So the first one is, what helps you feel close to me even when we're apart?
I love that.
Isn't that good?
It's so direct.
It is.
And it gives you such valuable insight.
Yeah, what do they need?
Yeah.
How can you actually show up for them?
Exactly.
Okay, another one is, what's one thing we can do together this week to stay connected? So you're, planning it out.
Yeah, you're being proactive.
Yeah, you're not just waiting for it to happen.
Exactly.
Okay, this one's big. How can we handle conflict better when we're not physically together?
Oh, that's huge.
Because it's hard, right?
It is.
When you can't just sit down and talk it out.
Yeah. And misunderstandings can happen so easily over text or even on the phone.
Totally. And then lastly, looking towards the future, what does our future together look like to you? Making sure you're on the same page.
Yeah, and I think all of these questions, they're not just conversation starters, they're tools.
Yeah.
To build and maintain that connection.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into long-distance relationships today,
Yeah.
I think the big takeaway is that it's hard, but it's doable.
It is. It often requires more patience, more intentionality, definitely strong communication skills.
But it can also lead to really deep emotional intimacy.
That's right. Because you have to find ways to connect beyond just the physical.
Right. And if you're listening to this and you're in a long-distance relationship right now, it is okay to miss your partner. It is okay to feel sad. It is okay to be frustrated.
Absolutely. And those feelings are valid.
The most important thing is that you're both putting in the effort. You're both committed to staying connected, to supporting each other.
Absolutely.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you as you navigate your own relationships.
Okay.
Distance doesn't have to be the end of the story. Think about that connection, that invisible thread that ties two people together.
Yeah.
And how maybe that emotional and intellectual intimacy can actually become stronger than any physical proximity.
That's a really powerful thought. Thanks for that.
Thanks for being here for this deep dive.
Of course, it was great.
We'll see you next time.
See you then.